Hi guys, my name is Cynthia Guzman and today I will be introducing a little bit about my research which is on anorexia and the brain. Eating disorders have been studied for many years. They can be led back to the 1600s and it's hard to say what causes these mental disorders as there are many factors that are involved. The eating disorder that I wanted to focus on today is anorexia nervosa. Anorexia is one of the most lethal psychiatric disorders. It is characterized by the restriction of energy intake, the intense fear of gaining weight, and the distorted view of body image. It is also the leading cause of death in psychiatric disorders. Before we dive into the brain function and how it is involved with this disorder, I wanted to give you guys a better understanding of what anorexia is and what it does to an individual. I am a recovered anorexic. I lived with this eating disorder for 6 years, and believe it or not, that is actually less than the average amount of time that most people live with anorexia. Again, it's hard to pinpoint the exact cause, but I can look back to my own experience and list out the many reasons of why. As a little girl, I was always much bigger than the rest of my classmates, and many of them felt the need to tell me that. I would also often get sick, and I would visit the pediatrician that would also encourage me to lose weight. I was tired of constantly being picked on, so at the ripe age of 10 years old, I decided it was time for a change, and it was time for me to take control of my life, which looking back now is quite absurd for a 10-year-old to think. The anorexia didn't appear out of the blue, it started off slowly. My mom had bought me a stationary bike that I rode for about 45 minutes every day, and I began incorporating more veggies and fruits into my diet. The weight slowly trickled down, and people began to notice. I was continuously complimented about how much better I looked, and this attention that I had never gotten before brought me so much joy. I decided I needed to push myself further, and I began a set of rules for myself. Now, I don't remember all of the rules that I had, but the ones that I do, I will list right now. And these are the rules that lasted the longest. The first one is I would have one meal a day. The second one, I would limit myself to 500 calories. The third one, I would try to ride my bike for a minimum of 2.5 hours every day. I would never eat after 7. The fifth one, I cut out meat, milk, sugar, and soda. I spiraled into an unstoppable tangent, but all I cared about was the number on the scale, and it lowered every day. I was no longer in control. Anorexia had fully taken over. It controlled me. I lost many friends due to the fact that I would only talk about losing weight and restricted food. I spent most of my days pent up in my room, cycling my legs off, and I had become cold, shivering even on hot summer days. But what I remember most about those years was how angry I had become. Anorexia is a selfish disorder. Well, at least it was for me. I only cared about myself, and on the days that the scale didn't drop, and the days that I saw the little girl that was always bigger than everyone else in the mirror, I made it known that I was angry. Now, I won't bore you with any more details about my recovery or my experience, but I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about my experience because that was what brought me to this research. I looked into the brain in individuals with anorexia, and I was able to see the many effects that it has. This picture is the brain of a young girl with anorexia, and I was intrigued when I first found this, as I compared it to the picture of another young girl without any eating disorder. This one here is the one with the eating disorder, and this one is the normal one. As you can see, there are many more empty dark spaces in this picture, and what we are looking at is the enlarged ventricles and the increased spaces of CFS. On this picture, we can see that everything is whole and everything is bright. What we found was that this picture was the lower what we found on this picture was that the lower the BMI, the higher the ventricle volume was, and the more darker and black spaces there were. Now, moving on, I wanted to talk a little bit about the gray and white matter. The gray matter is the cell bodies in the brain, and the white matter is the nerves that are covered in lipids and fats in the brain. Here is a picture of someone with anorexia, and I couldn't find any picture of a normal one, but what we learned from this was that people with anorexia has a significantly lower gray and white matter. And this is because when people lose body fat, they lose it all over the body. And if you didn't know this before, your brain has body fat, and that is why it is significantly lower. These same people came back months after recovery for another brain scan, and what we understood from their new pictures was that although the effects had increased and gotten better, they never really went back to normal. I'm not sure if you can see that quite well, but what I wanted to say with this is that there are many consequences that come with starving yourself. Some that may never go back to the way that they were before. And I want to remind you that eating disorders are not a choice. They are a mental illness. It is exhausting, draining, and not only to you, it's draining to your family as well, or your loved ones. Don't let them watch you deteriorate